So coming out of the MTC, I felt fairly confident in my French ability. Tahitian, not so much. I had a basis of French, a base of French, of about 5 years before the MTC. Coming out of the MTC felt like I had pretty much tripled all of my knowledge of French. Got to Tahiti. This strange kind of like fearlessness did set in right at the beginning. It was kind of like, now's the time to make mistakes. If I do make mistakes, I'll just be like, yeah, I've only been here a day, and then they'll be, sympathetic. So I remember getting to Tahiti and speaking to people. And because for whatever reason, just like all the fear was just like not there yet. It came like later, during the first lesson. But I was able to speak, but not understand like at all what they were saying because it was the Tahitian accent. So I'd had American teachers in the MTC who'd spoken to me. And of course their accents were, not too far off. But still, they're American. And then I'd heard the Parisian accent, like the French accent, in movies and things like that. So the Tahitian accent was just like this weird thing, and I just didn't understand very much at all. So my Tahitian companion, strangely, I was able to understand her perfectly. So I would say something, they would say stuff I didn't understand, she would repeat it back to me, and then I would speak, and it was just like this cycle. And so we interacted through my Tahitian companion. So that was all right at the beginning. And then very quickly I realized that I just needed to spend a lot of time listening to everything that they were saying, their conversation, their jokes, their way of expressing things. And I would literally just like in chunks, like memorize. Like I just memorized like phrases, or I'd memorize like it was literally like monkey see, monkey do. What they would do or say, like I would understand the context and I'd understand how to use it, and then I would just like use it until I kind of figured it out, how to construct my own sentences. It was beneficial as a missionary to know French and Tahitian because sometimes when you're walking on the streets, there are a lot of young people who are all speaking French. And then sometimes you'll go to an older person, elderly, and you'll start speaking to them in French and they'll understand you. But it is the coolest thing when you realize that they have trouble speaking French back to you. So you ask them if they speak Tahitian, and like 99% of the time, if it's an older person, they do speak Tahitian. And so you'll just start speaking in Tahitian to like re-explain something, and then they will just totally open up and they become like a totally different person. They get really into it. When I first got there, I kind of thought Tahitians were like very angry people because their voice gets really animated and really loud and really deep most of the time for men and women. But knowing Tahitian as a missionary was just another way to show them how much I loved them, enough to learn their cultural language. And the dynamics were really, you speak French most of the time on the main island, and then you learn Tahitian. You can learn quite a bit of Tahitian on the main island if you look for it, if you try and speak it, if you practice. But it's mostly in the outer islands where you speak Tahitian. Yes. There was one old man, and all the old men in Tahiti are called papis, and then the grandma people are called mommies. So there's one papi who did not really want to hear the gospel. He was not interested. And but we went to visit him anyway, just to introduce ourselves as missionaries, kind of befriend him and get to know him. And when we got there, we were speaking French, and he was kind of like, not really interested. And then I said, sorry, before we leave, do you mind if I practice my Tahitian on you? And like I'd spoken Tahitian for a while, so I knew it was okay. But I just wanted to do something different. And so I started speaking Tahitian to him, and I just basically bore my testimony. And it was the coolest thing because he went from being a very closed off man with like this long white ponytail. He kind of looks Native American, super bronzed, super tan. And as soon as I started speaking Tahitian, that was the first time he made eye contact with me. And as I spoke Tahitian, I could see him change, and I could see him become like almost like a little bit amazed to see a white girl speaking Tahitian. That was a big thing. Sometimes I like represented all white people. Sometimes I was the first white person that someone had seen. And so speaking Tahitian kind of created this awareness I think that missionaries were there with an important message. And we were able to teach him forever for several months after that, right up until I left.